we've started off another beginners challenge month. So this week's challenge is looking just at date functions really. So let's take a look at the data set that we're working with. So we have 3 different projects here. That's the kind of main thing. And we've got sort of sub-projects, owners of those projects, tasks that are being completed, when they're scheduled to be completed, and how many days they get completed post that scheduled date. So what we're going to be working towards is building that dashboard that Carl has in the challenge. The challenge is in the link if you haven't seen that dashboard. So that's basically, we're doing the calculations in Tableau Prep to make it easier to build in Tableau Desktop is the kind of theme of this challenge. So let's take a look at how we get to working out the completed date. So that will be taking the scheduled date and adding on this completed in days from scheduled date field. So we're going to do that, create that field by using the dateadd function that you can see here. So the syntax for this is that we want to add it in days, so it's the number of days rather than being months or years or anything else. It's the day that we want to add, and then it's that completed in days from scheduled date that we're adding on. So how many days I'll be adding on to that scheduled date, that's how many, and then it's the scheduled date itself. And something to be careful of here is when you hit save, then this completed date is a date time function. So we want to go ahead and change the data type into being just a date rather than a date time, because we don't need the time element at all. So that's just something to look out for too. And then we just need to rename that field to days difference to schedule as per the requirements. Now we're going to want to do some pivoting because we want to work out basically the difference between different tasks. So the number of days between scope and build and between build and deliver. And to do this, we want to pivot our data to make that easier, because the way that date calculations will work is across rows. So to work out, the difference between this date and this date, we can't do that without pivoting our data. So if we go ahead and make a pivot, I'm just going to remove this change that I've done here. Go ahead and pivot our data without removing any of the fields, then you'll see that what we get when we pivot and we have our tasks in our new column headers and our completed date as our rows, that we have quite a lot of nulls here. So we still don't have quite what we're aiming for. We don't have the deliver, scope and build all on one line, all on one row, because we've still got too much granularity in our data set. So what we want to do is we want to remove the schedule date and the days difference to schedule fields. And that will mean that when we pivot, we won't have those nulls. And the reason that we need to remove these two fields is that we're pivoting and including our completed date in the rows of these new task columns, but we're kind of keeping the information about the scheduled date, which we know is at the same level of detail as the completed date, as a separate field. So we just need to get rid of that basically. And that means that now when we do our pivot, we don't have that null issue anymore. And that's way better. We can now do our date calculations, work out those differences between scope and build and deliver. So let's see how we do that. Funnily enough, the calculation is called datediff. And again, we've got that day part here. That just means we want to work out the number of days between scope and build. And that's quite a nice simple syntax for that calculation, I think. And so we just do the same for build to deliver as well. Get those two calculations nicely, and then unpivot our data. So just undo that pivot that we did to make sure that we have that task and completed date in 2 columns again. And then we just join that back onto our data from before. And Carl gave us a helpful hint that we need to join on 3 different fields. So we need to join on the project, the owner, and the task. Now you could swap out the owner for the sub-project, because basically sub-project just determines which owner is going to be looking after it, because Jenny and Tom are operations, oh sorry, Jenny and Jonathan are operations, whereas Tom and Carl are both marketing. So you just need to have either the owner or the sub-project as one of the clauses alongside the project and the task. And then that gives us no duplication. We've got 18 rows coming in from each of our 2 branches, and they're joining together to give us 18 rows. So that's the way that the thing that we need to keep an eye on there. One last thing we've got to do is to work out what day of the week our tasks were completed on. And to do that, we use the datename function. So we use the datename function to say from the completed day, return the weekday. And that will give us, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, etc. And that's our challenge completed. So hopefully that was nice and clear, and hopefully you learned a lot about using some of the date functions in Tableau. Thanks for watching.